Lakers video for this year, and we're going to end in a festive spirit. We're going to decorate our Christmas cake. I'd like to take this opportunity to say to our members, families, volunteers, staff, and everyone who supports Lakers, a very happy Christmas and a very peaceful New Year. This is the Christmas cake that we baked a couple of weeks back. And what I'm going to do in order to give it as smooth a surface as possible, I'm actually going to ice the base of it. And in order that we don't have a big gap on the bottom, there's usually a little bit of a rounded top on the cake. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to slice a little bit of that off so that it sits better on my board. I enjoyed this bit because it means I get to taste the cake. So this piece that I take off will go with my cup of coffee later in the morning. And then we're going to have a flatter cake when we start to ice it. Once my cake is now sitting flat on the board, there's a couple of things I want to do. I want to measure the diameter of the cake and down the sides. So I'm using a piece of string. This is so I know how big to roll out my marzipan and my icing. So if I cut it at this level, when I start to roll out my icing, I'll know this is the size to make it. Second thing I want to do is there's a few little indents here, say where maybe a raisin was. And if you have any impurities on the surface of the cake, they'll show up in the icing. So we just want to take a little bit of marzipan and go around and fill in just any of the significant ones, little gaps like this. Anything that's too tiny we don't need to worry about. Just make sure then that they're level on the top. And the same thing around the sides. If we have any very big gaps around here, we can go around and take a strip of the marzipan and pop it in along the edge. And that will ensure that our sides are even as well. So once I'm satisfied that the surface is relatively even, I'm going to coat it with some apricot jam. Now what I've done with this is I've warmed it just to make it a bit more liquid, and then I've also passed it through a sieve to take out any large lumps. And what this will do for us is it will give a kind of a sticky surface to the cake so that the marzipan will stick. Don't forget to do around the sides as well. Now we're ready to roll out our marzipan. Now I have my marzipan rolled out, and this is where we make sure our piece of string, that all the way around our marzipan, is as long as the piece of string. Okay, now we're going to move our cake back and we're going to put our covering over it. Looking to get it on as evenly as we can, and then we're going to gently ease it down around each side. I'll always make it bigger and have a bit left over. You don't want it to be short at any point. Might look like it's going to fold in on itself, so just gently lift it out. And the way we're going to smooth this off is using a little bit more icing sugar. We're going to use the palm of our hands. There will be a few little indents because we didn't get all the holes, or sometimes where we filled it will be higher. So that's fine. We're going to go around the sides. Make sure it's tucked in at the very bottom all the way around. And then what we want to do is use a short bladed palette knife if you have one, or something with a short sharp edge on it. We're going to cut the whole way around. Now once we've trimmed our excess, we're going to do a last little bit of smoothing the whole way around. And what we're going to do is we're going to leave that to dry out maybe for 2 or 3 days, because there is a lot of natural oils in the almonds and that will start to seep up through your icing. So we're going to give it a couple of days to dry, and in true traditional television format, I have one that I've done earlier. So this is my cake that has been drying for a couple of days. You can see from the surface that it's a little bit more dried out. I want to remeasure it because we have put a layer of marzipan on, so it'll be slightly bigger for when we roll out our icing. So that's my new width for rolling out my icing. In the same way that we needed to put a bit of apricot jam onto our cake to stick the marzipan, we need the icing to stick as well. So we're actually moistening it with a little bit of clear alcohol. Now, if you do not want to use alcohol, you can mix up a little bit of egg white, and that will give a little sticky layer. Now, we don't want it to get too wet, but we do need to get the icing to stick to it. Don't forget to do a little bit around the sides as well. If you feel you've got too much on, go back over with a bit of paper towel and just take the excess off. Now we're ready to roll our icing. This is our white fondant icing we're going to roll out. In years past, they would have always traditionally done a royal icing, and that goes on as a liquid, and I know as kids we used to pat the top of it to make it look like snow, and that needs a good few days to dry, but I find this one is really nice to work with. Again, you can make your own fondant icing, but it's so much easier just to buy it in the shops. It's also great for shaping if you want to do cutting out little shapes to go on the top of your cake. And we're going to do that with some coloured icing as well. Now, similar to our marzipan, we have our piece of string. We just want to make sure that all the way around it's going to fit over our cake. And we're going to lay it back over our rolling pin and bring our cake back in. Again, similar to our marzipan, we want to lay it gently over the top. We're going to ease it down around the sides. When you're doing your icing, it's important not to have any rings on your fingers because they can actually leave marks on the icing. Again, we can use a bit of icing sugar and the palm of our hand to smooth everything over. And our little flat-edged knife to trim it off. The final decoration of your cake can seem quite daunting, but a handy tip is maybe to put a piece of ribbon, something nice and silver like that, or perhaps something red around the sides of it, so that covers one aspect of it. And then if you have some cookie cutters, like a nice Christmas tree, we have some holly leaves or a large star. And I've also made some royal icing and I've coloured it different colours. So I'm going to attempt to do a bit of writing on the top of it. But the other side of it is, if you want, you can probably get a little Merry Christmas tag, put it on the top of it. And if you really want to do a simple job, Put some ribbon around the outside and a piece of holly on the top. So I put a silver ribbon around the sides and I just stuck it here with a little bit of royal icing. And now I'm going to get a little bit creative with some cutout pieces. So I have a few different sizes of Christmas tree. And again, we're going to use a little bit of that plain clear alcohol to help stick them. Here we see, we'll put one tree here. One here. Have a little bit of holly. These are just to show you a few examples of what you can do. You could cut lots of these out and stick them all around the outside as well, rather than using a ribbon. We have an angel. She's probably a bit big for the top of the tree, but we'll put her up there anyway. And I have a few stars to go in the sky. The important thing about this is that you have fun with it. It doesn't have to be a masterpiece at the end of the day. It's something that you can do together with your family. And if it turns out perfect, oh, that's brilliant. But if it turns out a little bit messy, nobody minds either. Now, I'm going to put something on the tree. So this is some of my yellow royal icing. It's like a set of Christmas tree lights. And I have some red, to put a few red dots of baubles. And we can do some red berries for the holly. And I'm going to attempt to write on it. So what do we write? We write Merry Christmas. So try and keep your hand moving and let the icing fall from a height rather than keeping it too close to the cake. And don't forget, Christmas is a long word. I always run out of space. I think that's probably why people shorten it to Xmas, but we won't. We'll try and fit Christmas in. Cutting it close, but we'll make it. And do a fancy A and an S. That's far from perfect, but you know, you can read it. It's homemade, decorated by our own fair hands. That's what's important. Happy Christmas, everybody.